Before the Pallavas, the Indian peninsula was locked in the Kalabhra interregnum. Borders shifted wildly, and early kings built their monuments with timber, brick, and mud. When those empires fell, their physical legacy simply rotted into the soil. King Simhavishnu ended that cycle. Through a series of violent military campaigns, he broke the Kalabhra hold and seized control of the region, fortifying the city of Kanchipuram as a permanent imperial capital. His armies secured highly profitable trade routes. The expansion traced the Palar River basin, locking down the agricultural wealth and river networks that would serve as the economic engine for a massive new state. Historical records confirm this aggressive territorial grab. This text details how Simhavishnu pushed his dominions far beyond Kanchi, extending his southern border all the way to the Kaveri River. Having secured a centralized state, the old methods of building with perishable wood were no longer sufficient. An empire of this size required a physical medium that would outlast the monsoons and project authority for centuries. Simhavishnu's son, Mahendravarman I, inherited a wealthy state but faced a unique problem. As long as his monuments were made of brick and wood, his dynasty's legacy remained vulnerable to fire, rot, and future conquests. His solution was laborious and permanent. Pallava engineers bypassed traditional construction entirely. They took heavy chisels against the unyielding faces of solid granite mountains, calculating how to hollow out the bedrock itself. As this text outlines, these earliest structures are classified as the Mahendravarman type, featuring massive square pillars. Granite is notoriously difficult to carve. The sheer physical toll of removing tons of rock by hand dictated the blocky layouts of these first caves. Once the halls were excavated, sculptors turned the interior walls into permanent records. They carved their bloodlines directly into the mountain, ensuring that whoever ruled the land would have to look upon the faces of the Pallava kings. By abandoning traditional masonry for solid bedrock, Mahendravarman drafted the earth's crust into his political strategy. His monuments were designed to ensure his dynasty appeared as permanent as the mountains themselves. Decades later, under Narasimhavarman I and Rathas, that mastery of stone reached the coast. At Mahabalipuram, Pallava engineers systematically carved these seaside boulders into a sprawling imperial port city. How Mahabalipuram's rock sculptures projected a righteous image of the king by recreating the Ganges descending from the heavens. Engineers incorporated a natural cleft in the granite. During rituals, water channeled from above cascaded down, simulating a waterfall surrounded by carved deities. Down by the water, they erected the shore temple out of dressed granite blocks. Dedicated to Shiva and Vishnu, its towering silhouette doubled as a massive navigational beacon. Foreign ships traversing the Bay of Bengal used its stepped peaks to guide them safely into the harbor, and those ships arrived in droves. Mahabalipuram anchored a vast maritime network. The empire sent spices and textiles across the ocean to Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and Sumatra, while exporting the Pallava script to form the basis for multiple Southeast Asian writing systems. The towering temples and monolithic carvings greeting these foreign merchants served a specific purpose. They functioned as a calculated display of vast wealth and engineering dominance, aimed at intimidating global trade partners into favorable deals. But a permanent empire requires a stable bloodline, and in the 8th century, the main Pallava lineage abruptly failed. The king died without an heir, instantly plunging the state into a massive power vacuum. To prevent a devastating civil war, state officials launched a frantic international search. They scoured distant provinces and overseas territories to find any viable collateral descendant who could claim the throne. They eventually located a 12-year-old boy named Mamalla, living far from the capital. Bringing a foreign child to Kanchipuram and crowning him Nandivarman II was a highly dangerous political maneuver, entirely dependent on convincing a skeptical aristocracy. To secure his grip on the crown, Nandivarman II turned to the dynasty's most trusted tool. He built the Vaikunta Perumal Temple and commissioned sculptors to carve the complete story of his divine selection and coronation directly into the inner walls. The entire succession crisis and its resolution were locked into the masonry. When biological continuity failed, the Pallava state used sequential art, carved into immovable stone, to legitimize the new king and enforce imperial order. Decades later, the dynasty reached the peak of its engineering capabilities with the Kailasanathar temple. Its soaring, deeply carved towers and complex sandstone layers represented the absolute zenith of Pallava structural design. Yet, stone walls cannot fight armies. Relentless military collisions with the rival Chalukyas to the north and the rising Cholas to the south steadily ground the empire down. By the late 9th century, the Pallava borders finally crumbled, and their political dominance was erased. But their conquerors did not destroy the Pallava legacy, they absorbed it. The Cholas took the exact architectural blueprints developed at Kanchipuram and Mahabalipuram and scaled up those designs. The foundational engineering, the transition from timber to rock-cut caves, and finally to freestanding structural granite, provided the exact mathematical templates for the massive temple complexes that would follow. The Pallava military and royal bloodlines were completely wiped from the map. Yet, by forcing their legacy into granite, their architectural blueprint survived the collapse of their empire, dictating the shape of the South Indian skyline for the next 1,000 years.